I'm excited to be back once again talking about fair pricing in surface pattern design with Pippa Shaw and Portia Monberg. If you haven't seen our previous talks, I will link them below, but Portia runs a Facebook group called Fair Pricing for Surface Pattern Design, which you should definitely join. And we wanted to talk about the things that, even before we get into specific numbers of what would really be useful or what are good prices for pattern design, we wanted to talk about things that we need to have in mind when we are pricing. And so we've already talked about 2 out of those 3 things. The first was, know that your art has value, and we really discussed that in a previous video. And the second thing is understand that you can negotiate and, know what you can negotiate about. And we talked about different terms you might negotiate and things like that. And today we're covering the final sort of tenet of making sure you're pricing your work fairly. And that is to sort of take a long-term zoomed out view when you're pricing for individual projects. And we'll kind of dig in a little bit more of what we mean by that. But welcome, guys. Thanks for joining me again.
Hey.
So the 2 things, when we were talking about the idea of zooming out, we were really referring to 2 parts. One is individual, like the long-term sustainability of pricing, like how you're pricing your work right now. Yes, that's great for, hopefully, no matter what, hopefully you're getting a few dollars, and that's a good like win for you as someone who's trying to get client work or licensing deals. But looking at the idea of, if this was the amount I was getting consistently, would this be enough to support me as I try to, make a full-time living with my art, right? So, being able to take a step back and think about that when you're pricing, some of your first projects, especially, that can be really difficult to sort of know what's going to work in the future. But I think it's something that we do need to, address and to consider, because as I've said before, like I've been there when I was first starting as a freelancer. I was just trying to get work. My skill set was surface pattern design. I wanted work in surface pattern design. I knew my prices were low, but I was like, I'd rather earn $100 than earn $0, right? And that's a totally common mindset.
Yeah.
What do you think, Pip, about that?
Yeah, it is really hard, because you think about back to the start, and obviously, it's easy to have an imposter syndrome, because you don't have a whole list of clients, you have to have a whole list of experience. But actually, if you look at your portfolio, you're not starting from scratch. You've put in the hours, the chances are you've done some courses, you've done projects as if they were for clients, and you've seen how it works, you have an understanding of it, you've just invested also in your equipment, all of that has value. Sometimes it's good to, if you have friends who run their own business that's not a design business, say they're a plumber, or I don't know, an electrician or a caterer, they don't start out by pricing everything really, really low. They've got a qualification, or they are a caterer, they have supplies they have to buy, they have their time, they have to pay the bills, you have your taxes, it all builds up, so that actually the base that you're going to start at is not next to nothing. And if really the worst came to the worst, and the project was a disaster, and for your own good, I would just say to the client, okay, you don't have to pay me, but I just can't imagine that would happen. But if that makes you feel better about asking, and then once you've done that first project and you've been paid what you should, a decent, okay, it'll be the lower side of what you hope to earn in the first place, it will give you the confidence, and it will make you feel like you're not an imposter, you are the real thing.
I love that.
Kind of how I see it. I
love that. I think, Portia, I know you had sent us, and I had seen it before too, but Jessica Heish, she is a really great lettering artist, and she has a pricing a pricing guide that if I can find it, I will link it below. And it's more geared towards sort of like graphic design, a little bit more illustration. It's not exactly perfect for our industry, but one thing that I think is helpful is the exercise that she kind of brings you through as to figuring out what your, basic needs are for, like your rent and your food and your, like all your bills, and like divide it by how many hours you think you're going to work and whatever, figuring out kind of a base hourly that you need minimum. Because it's easy to say like, oh, I just love doing this work. I just want to get into this industry. So I'm cool with $50 or $150 or whatever it is, even if it took me 4 hours or whatever, because I'm excited to make that deal. But if you think about 4 hours for $150 and then dividing that by, whatever, 150 divided by 4, I could not do that off the top of my head, but let's just say somewhere in the $40 range, right? And then and $40 per hour is not the worst hourly, but just like, figuring out what you need to make hourly, bare minimum, to actually pay all your bills,
Because otherwise you're going to lose money. You're losing money. You're doing this to pay for someone else's business.
Exactly.
Her course is called The Dark Art of Pricing.
Okay. Yeah. Dark Art of Pricing. Yes.
Yeah.
So she has a lot of great resources.
I've had some really good things from, I've had some good
feedback. She does. But just starting with that base level.
Yeah, I was going to say it's definitely more geared towards graphic designers.
Yeah.
And I think it might be like, for me, that's my background. So like I related to it, but I think it might be a little overwhelming for someone who's coming from surface pattern design.
Yeah.
I would recommend checking out the Fair Pricing group, because there are a lot of really frank discussions about sort of minimums that you should charge. And I've done a lot of surveys, and you can sort of find out what the market rate is. And I think that that's a good way to go, because it will give you confidence, that you can charge a certain amount and no one is going to be shocked by it, because it's kind of what the market will bear.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think realistically, most surface pattern designers have multiple streams of income. So you could calculate out everything you need, and you may still find that you're not, able to sell enough designs. Even if you charge a decent hourly rate, that's assuming that you're going to get paid, for 40 hours a week.
Yeah, you can't assume that. That's
yeah.
I don't know if Jessica Heish has that in her thing, but that's what I've seen for calculating other things. Like, don't expect that you're working 40 right. paid hours a week, because so much of what we do is the admin and the other things, marketing ourselves and whatever, that is not paid work. So,
and just some patterns take a really long time. I do some really intricate patterns, and those can take hours and hours. But to kind of counter that, I see a lot of people saying, well, I sell my complex designs for this amount, and then I sell my simple designs for this other amount. And just personally, I have a little bit of an issue with that, because I do think that if a company, I'm not talking about a fabric collection, but say a company is going to put your design on notebooks and a whole bunch of other products, and they happen to choose a simple design, I think you should still ask more for that, because if they're doing a one-off and they're just buying that design, that's the design that's going to bring them money. So you shouldn't discount a simple design. I think in a certain context, like if you have a fabric collection, I get it. You're going to sell the simple coordinates for less. But when you're talking about something that you're licensing to a big company to put on products, don't sell yourself short if it's a simple design.
Yeah, and I think I've said it before, but sometimes a simple design, it could have taken a long time to go around to actually ending up with that, making that decision that you're going to get rid of all these parts that you originally planned. And especially if you're selling outright, once you've made that, you can't make it again, because you've done it, and you go to a lot of really nice stores where they sell like these notebooks and everything that Portia's saying, and they sell a lot of them, and generally they are the sort of simpler designs that sell well, because they appeal to the most people. So it has value, as we were said in the first
chat.
Everything has value to the client.
Yeah, and beautiful simplicity can be one of the most difficult things to do,
Yeah.
because it's got to be perfect. You know what I mean? If
Yeah.
it's simple.
Yeah. You notice if it's not. And color choice, you know, that's another thing. That's
Yeah.
a skill that is very underrated, you know, and it could be a very simple design, but you spent hours, playing with color palettes and just getting it, and then bam, you just got that combination that's just right, that
Yeah.
is on trend, or is creating a trend, or whatever it is, or it just hits. There's just some patterns, like there's 5 colors that you use, and it's just, that's the way it's meant to be, and it doesn't work in as well in any other way. So all these things are your experience, your value, whether it took you time to get there, or if you've got years of experience so you get there quicker, that all has value. So don't forget, just because you're enjoying it doesn't mean you should be punished.
Yeah, exactly. Agreed. And so while it is hard to sort of see what the future might hold and whatever, trying to think about that when you're originally signing on with a client or signing a deal or whatever is something to consider and to take an extra beat, about. I have a artist that I know of who works with one of the same freelance clients as I do. And this freelance client has a lot of artists on their freelance roster. And so whenever I run into another one, I'm like, what are you making with them? Because it is hourly. I don't necessarily recommend hourly. Flat fee is probably better way to price your work. But in this case, we do hourly. But I'm always comparing prices because, I've found that the range is pretty wide, and I want to make sure that everyone's getting as much as they can. I don't know if you notice this, but this is important to me. It's a subject I like to talk about. So anyways, this artist, told me what she was making, and it was about $10 an hour less than what I was making. And she told me, and this is a very talented artist. She has other things going on, and she's very, very talented, well-known. And she told me that when she first signed on with this client, she was so, excited to work with them that she signed on for a super low hourly rate. Maybe it was like 4 years, it was a while ago. But because she signed on for that low hourly rate, even though she has been pushing up, as we always recommend, like push your prices up each time and each year and whatever, you should be doing that. She has been doing that, but basically nudging it up, whatever, $5 an hour for the last 4 years or whatever, hasn't even pushed it up to where I started when I first negotiated what I wanted. So, and she said, I said, oh, you could be getting more. I said, I was like, have you asked about a raise or whatever? And she's like, I have, but they do bump me up, but pandemic this, pandemic that. This was like a couple of years or a year ago that I talked to her. And so basically they weren't really able to get, or they weren't willing to give her a huge bump to get her in the same, whatever zone as some other artists, or what she deserves, because she started so much lower. And she continues to work for them because she enjoys the work, or whatever. And that's, again, no shade, we do what we want to do, but when you start low, it is harder to get higher,
Yeah, because you can kid yourself saying, oh yeah, I'll just do this one, but you don't know that first client you get might end up being a client you keep for 5 or 10 years, and you just don't know. And especially if you're more likely to get work with them if you're getting paid a low rate, but you'll not end up resenting it and not feeling great, and then not putting your heart and soul into it after a while because you feel like they're taking advantage of you. But and it's hard to raise your prices. It's a psychological point for your client as well. If you're going to raise your prices by, let's say, want to raise them by 30% or 50%, they're going to say no, because it's such a big, it seems like a big percentage, but, so the closer you can get to the price you should be getting, the better. Because then if you're only raising, $5 an hour, and that's, 10%, that's, obviously easier for them to
Yeah, the benefit of surface pattern design, licensing and freelance client work is that you tend to have repeat clients. You really do. Most clients are going to not, I mean, I don't know most, but all my clients are repeat clients. Like they have need for patterns season after season, product after product. And so they come back because they know what it's like to work with me. In other industries, sometimes it's really is a one-off, like an editorial illustration for a certain type of article. Oh, we know that you're great at lettering, so we're going to go with this lettering artist. And then the next time they need something that's more with figures or whatever, you know, you might jump around, but we tend to have repeat clients. So that's why, you know, the long-term sustainability really does make a difference for your individual, you know, how your career is going to progress.
You know, and once they know you, sorry, Portia.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, are you talking specifically about freelance, or are you also talking about licensing?
Well, licensing too. Once you develop a relationship with a licensing partner, often like you're already in their system. Let's just put it this way. Paperwork alone is enough to keep you, like if you're a good, you know, if you have work that they can keep using, they'd rather keep using your work than find someone else who has similar work that would do it, because they've gotten you in their system for royalties and all that stuff. So you're likely to, once you've been signed on with a licensing partner, to continue to license with them.
Yeah, and they know who you are, and they know that, you know how they work, you know, because obviously every client, you know, even with fabric, you know, they have different setups. Some want color separation, some want 36 inch, some want 24 inch, you know, blah, 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 25¼ inch I've had, you know, but once you've worked, you know, and you know how they like the files set up, you know, from feedback with them, you know, how, you know, they like to just the whole project, the process of the project, you know, how, when they'll want to see, you know, I have some clients who they trust me so much now, they don't even ask me to send things over because they know I'll just send them over when they're ready and they're good. And then there'll be some very, you know, minor changes at the end, but, you know, they can trust me. And that has value too, because that means they're not spending a lot of time, you know, educating me on what they need, or having to spend a lot of time going, oh no, we really need to change this or that or the other. You know, that all of that, if anything that makes your client's life easier, you know, if they, you know, and if they enjoy working with you, then yeah, you know, you're gonna keep coming back to you, and you'll be in their mind as well because they've just been working with you. So
for your repeat licensing clients, do you continue to reach out to them with with new work, or do they come to you with projects then?
I find both. So I try and send a newsletter every couple of months, and with new work, but also, especially with like with fabric clients, you know, there's a certain, you know, yearly kind of cycle. They kind of know when they're going to be looking, and usually, obviously, like my main fabric client, they come to me and they go, hey, you know, it's that time, you know, would you like to do another collection? And I'll be like, yay, because I love making fabric collections. And then, you know, they ask me if I have any ideas, and they sometimes have an idea, or they'll see something I posted on Instagram or something from my newsletter, and they'll be like, we love this design, do you think you would like to make a collection around that? Or sometimes it depends, you know, also how busy I am, because, you know, maybe in the summer and I've, you know, it's a bit of a quieter time, and I just, you know, had a great idea for a collection, so I put some ideas together, and then I go, hey, I had this idea for this collection, what do you think? And then it might not happen in the, you know, the next release, because obviously they've lined up, you know, you have to, you know, if someone else is doing a marine themed collection, then obviously they're not going to want to do another marine themed collection, but they'll be like, oh, we love that, so we'll definitely like keep that on the back burner for like maybe the next release or the one after that, you know. So it works in so many different ways, but, you know, it's definitely a two-way. And then obviously you have some clients and they're just like, they'll send an email and they're like, we're looking for stuff now, have you got anything, you know? It's, yeah, I think it's just like with everything in this industry, every client is different, you know. I mean, there's a few standards, but every client has their own way of working, you know. And obviously with
why pricing is so hard.
But with the pandemic as well, you know, we've had all these issues with paper, you know, and, you know, shipping and everything else. So, you know, a lot of clients, you know, things are taking longer, or they're starting earlier. So, you know, it's a moving target, but
it really is.
They know you're flexible as well. And, you know, I mean, it helps them too, you know, in every way, just having a good relationship with you. And
Yeah, I agree. And so, you want to ask yourself, is this pricing going to work for me down the road? And then you also want to ask, is this pricing, going to work within the industry? Is this going to affect, what the industry standards are? And this is another tricky one. As I said, this is like the hardest, all of this that we're talking about today, I feel like is the hardest one to really like grasp. But this is tricky because, I mean, it's like, you have to live for yourself. You can't do everything for like everyone else. And so I understand. And like I said, I've been saying, I really don't like to, kind of shame people for having like super low pricing, because I've been there and I've had low pricing, and you have to keep pushing it up. That's always my advice. Like if you really have to start low, but really push it up. But, there is a certain point where it is actually, hurting the industry. And I think that brings a lot of fear into pricing too, because I hear other artists like, I don't know what to do with pricing, because a lot of people in the group in this in fair pricing group, it's like, what should I do? Because I don't want to hurt the industry. We've heard this over and over again. I don't want to bring down the industry. And that is, it's tricky. Anyone have any advice on that?
Well, I think, obviously you have to put yourself first and, your business first, but obviously like it is such a great community. That's one of the things I love about surface design. I mean, I met you guys, I've got so many other friends, and it is a community. We are there for each other, because, we aren't organized, but all independent. And so of course, like I want to do the best by my friends as well, but also, if you really are thinking, no, I've just got to earn money, but this is for you as well. It's not just that you're doing it for everyone else. You're doing it for you in the future. And, it's not
you are the industry in the future, right?
Yeah.
If you're just starting out with your pricing, you're going to be in the industry, So yeah, I see what you're saying.
And, I get so often in my inbox, these people are expecting to pay like $50, $100, and, it's wasting a lot of my time, because like, I do want to explain to them like why that is not just because they've, found something on Fiverr for that amount, from, I don't know, someone in a very different situation, I mean, I've heard of people, who spent a lot of money on some courses and then, thought that as long as they work hard, suddenly all these deals would come to them. And then they're like, hey, like I spent, like $1,000 or $500 or whatever it is on this course. And I'm desperate to get my money back, because I put this money in, and I'm desperate to get it back. So I'm just going to get whatever I can, and that's not, you don't want to jump into this business like, half-hearted. It's a very long-term investment, and you got to keep taking courses, you got to keep learning, you need to do your research on the courses you're going to take. Don't just suddenly think, oh, there's this fear of missing out, there's this deal and everyone else is talking about it, and now I'm worried that I'm going to miss out and I'll ruin my career if I don't take it. Like really sit down with yourself and go through a list, like what areas do I know Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop? Do I know, do I have the technical skills? Then you have to, do I have marketing skills? Which parts, because there are courses for everything, like Elizabeth does these amazing courses, like where she's realistic and, this is actually what you need to do to earn a living, not just to sell a dream, but just to, this is how it is to be a working designer as well, like the actual reality, not this Instagram fantasy, that we all get sucked into, that's the way it is.
Yeah, I say for some of my, like if you've taken a workshop of mine, I mean, I give hints in my workshop, but when I'm talking about the class, I say, well, you're going to see testimonials where people get work in the first 6 weeks that they're taking this class. Like, of course, I'm going to highlight the people who got work immediately or whatever, or got a deal or got, an agent or whatever. Of course, I'm going to highlight that stuff. But my course, I never guarantee you're going to get work from my course. I wish I could, that'd be amazing. But, it really is a long-term thing. And I feel like I see with students and with just, in general, on like Facebook and stuff like that, I feel like, 2 to 3 years to get some good traction and to start being like, even all the artists that I've interviewed over the last year and a half, I feel like most of them, some people had a full-time living after a year, but most of them were around like 2 to 3 years that they had a decent chunk of money starting to come in.
And it's 2 years of very consistently sending your work
yeah,
out.
yeah. Not like I learned about surface pattern 2 years ago.
Yeah.
2 years of like real dedication. And
well, and not, I learned about surface design and then started an Instagram account. I mean, I think there's this myth that you're going to be discovered on Instagram. And I think that, maybe for like 0.01%, let's say, maybe that happens. But for most people, it's consistently sending out work to clients.
You're right.
And you have to decide, like, do you just love surface design and you're doing it kind of for fun, and you just have your Instagram account and take on a few jobs here and there, or are you really trying to make a business out of it? And if you are, you really need to have a plan in place, a marketing plan, and you need to be disciplined. I mean, that's really it. It's not fun sending out your work, but it's a business.
Yeah. And like that's where that sustainability comes in. Yeah. That's where the thinking long-term about the industry, because if you're going to have a business in that industry, you want to be thinking, how can you elevate the industry? And I think that's something we all get to, some sooner than others, you know what I mean? But it's like, now I'm so invested in this industry in general, and wanting everyone to be making more money, and knowing that we're all probably making too little, because we're not asking for enough, because we're not negotiating, because we're not valuing our art, because we're not thinking long-term, all these things that we're talking. This is why we're doing this, right now. This is why Portia started her Facebook group. It's because we have to think a little bit more globally, more zoomed out about the industry. So
well, that's what I love about all the conversations. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's good to support each other, like in the group.
And that's what I love about the conversations on the group, though, is that new designers will say, I've been offered X amount, what do you guys think? And then all the experienced designers will chime in and really help people price their designs well and not get taken advantage of. Because I think we need to clear all that out. All these, there are just tons of companies popping up all the time trying to make stuff and looking for patterns, and a lot of them are really wanting to get it super cheap, and we kind of have to put our foot down as a group and say no. We're not going to,
especially when so many designers are entering the industry through courses and whatnot. And wanting to make back their money from the courses or whatever it is. I feel like this is a very online industry. I learned in college, but so most people I know did not learn in this industry in college, and they have learned it through courses, online courses, which is amazing. That's wonderful. I salute that. But the only thing is, that means that, there is a ton of people who are looking for any, small sign that they should keep going. And that small sign might be a $25 offer, which is a little too small, guys. So having your Facebook group to kind of bounce off, like, hey, is this normal? Is this something I should go for?
And other people see things so much more clearly when it's you in the situation. And then you start, we've said this before, you have the doubts, and then even we do after all these years of, you're like, oh my God, I'm asking too much, I'm asking too little. Or sometimes you just, because it's you, and it's so, close to you, you care about it, you're passionate about it, this is your life, and you sacrifice things to get to this position, and then you don't want to lose the deal. No one wants to lose a deal but you don't want to get taken advantage of, because trust me, there's nothing worse afterwards than thinking, oh my God, they took advantage of me, like I totally should have, like I'm so stupid, it's just annoying, and you don't, it's not, I just don't ever think it will be a deal breaker, if you actually ask for the right amount of money. And if it is a deal breaker, then that's a red flag,
or if it's a deal breaker because they don't have the budget, then it's like, okay, sorry, like that's
if
just,
you don't have the budget for design, then you shouldn't be making this product.
Exactly.
Like, you're not running your business very well, because you've accounted for all the other materials. Like, this is the most important part of your product, probably. So yeah.
Yeah.
And one other thing as well I want to say, especially to people starting out, don't be afraid to have a part-time job, you know, to keep you going through those first 2 years, because it kind of fuels your passion for the time that you do have. If you're just there like all the time, you know, it can be easy to get distracted, ending up on Instagram, blah, blah, blah. But you kind of, it'll give you that freedom because you haven't got so much financial pressure, because you know you've got some money coming in just to cover the basics, and then you will organize the time that you do have to work on your business so much better because you're valuing it, you know, compared to your part-time work. And you know, it can be anything, like it doesn't have to be a creative job as well. Maybe it's better to have something that's not creative, so that all your creative energy is there for when you do have the time, you know. And with all iPads now as well, you know, if you're watching your favorite Netflix series, you know, you can be working on an iPad at the same time, you know, and it doesn't have to be pressurized work in your free time. And you know, and then as well, you really will get a much better idea of what the industry's like, and you know, which area you should maybe try and specialize in, and then you're in a much better position to make an informed decision about the rest of your life, you know. Because I've seen some friends, you know, be told, you know, like, oh, you just got to go for it 100%, give up everything, this is your dream, blah blah blah, and then it hasn't worked out so well, you know. And then just, you know, mentally and emotionally, that's not a good place to go either, you know. Everyone's different. Some people are tougher, and you know, some people are good at pivoting, you know, and like going, okay, this isn't working, but I can pivot and, you know, go into something, you know, a different area that I never even thought of before. But you know, some people are like, I want to be a fabric designer, and that's it. And you know, they just have stuck in that dream, and then if it doesn't work out, then they feel like a failure and devastated.
Yeah.
Well, and realistically, do you think there are any people that survive on just making fabric alone?
I know that like there's some big names in the quilting industry but they still diversify in the fabric industry, you know, because they do in-person classes and conferences, they have maybe a YouTube channel, or they do promotions, you know, with manufacturers, they write patterns, or they sell PDF patterns, you know, or they do quilts
about different things.
Books, magazine
so like
work.
the actual just sitting down and doing like an actual print pattern for fabric is I gotta say that's a no. I don't think.
And fabric is not one of the best. It's one of the hardest. Like I would say the skill level needed, especially for like quilt fabric collections, I mean, there's a lot of math involved in, you know, it as well, which is a shock to some people. But also, you know, the technical sort of side of it, you know, I mean, it depends on which company you work with, like, you know, how much they take care of. I mean, if you can do the technical side, they will love you for it, because that's less things that they have to do. And also you have more control over, you know, how your work is. But, you know, there's so many things. I mean, that's a whole conversation, you know.
Well, but I think when we're talking about zooming out, that it's important for people out there to realize that if you're a surface pattern designer or just a surface designer, you need multiple streams of income. That is, you know, just kind of out there being transparent for people, so that when you're making an investment in your career and you're seeing some of these courses that are trying to sell you a dream of, okay, you'll become a fabric designer and then you're going to be making 6 figures and all this stuff. I mean, I just read in a Facebook thread, someone was going to quit their nursing job and just focus on surface pattern design. And so I think a reality check is needed, that it's fine to invest in the courses. But just realize, okay, maybe you'll hang on to your job while you're taking the courses.
We'll try to go part-time.
You maybe will not get paid back for that investment for a couple of years. And just, this is also an aspect of just looking at the big picture, you know, just sort of understanding the industry. And so really, really do your due diligence, research. If you're going to take a class, research the class, try to find someone who's taken it before, understand what the content is, and does that content match what Pippa was talking about earlier? Does that match what you need for your skills? So there's
so many good teachers out there, and they all have different skill sets, and just because you like their work, it doesn't mean that their course is going to be the one that covers, because a lot of designers don't want to teach their style because that's what makes them them, so
Yeah.
you
And vice
just need
versa.
to, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, you may not like their work, but they may be very successful.
But they have the marketing skills that you need or whatever.
Exactly.
So don't be put off by their aesthetic, or their clients. And actually, they're not going to probably want to share their clients with their students because they're their clients. They work hard to get them. So maybe it's good that you don't have the same aesthetic, but that they're other skills, because there's a whole heap of skills involved.
Yeah.
And another thing about long term, I was just thinking when Portia was talking then, licensing especially is a long term deal.
Long
it can be really long term sometimes. There's delays as well, but you can design a collection, you won't see 1 cent from it for maybe 18 to 24 months, and then you don't even know how much it's going to be. You have to wait and see. There's so many, you have to, it's like a pipeline, you build up a pipeline. It's like any in business
you're putting like a bucket into the pipe every 6 months or whatever, and it takes a while before there's enough water to actually push the water out the other end, right? That's exactly
turn it into gold.
And then eventually as you keep doing those buckets for a long time, then you have a steady stream, and then the stream gets more and whatever. But that's a good pipeline is definitely the word for it. Because
and also like have your group, have your support. There's so many great people online, and you'll be lucky enough to for your paths to cross. I mean, we're all in different areas, but we came together, because that's the way it is nowadays. We're so lucky with the internet, and you're gonna have highs and you're gonna have lows, and you're definitely gonna have the lows. So you send out your work, you get rejected, it happens, and it does get easier. But then some days it isn't easier, especially if it's like a dream client and you built up the courage to finally contact them because you thought the time was right or whatever. So that's when you need your friends to support you, because no one really understands the industry like people that work in it, So, and also you want to share it's so nice. Like when one of my friends, like I'm in an art collective, Four Corners Art Collective, and when one of us gets a deal, and you're just so happy for them, and then that lifts you up. And that's what we're saying about, lifting the prices. It's exactly the same with like when someone gets a win. It's not a job you didn't get. That is great because they're getting paid well and they love it, and that lifts you up, and you think, this is going to happen for me, and it's just because this sort of positivity encourages positivity, and you got to embrace that.
I just got a DM this weekend from a student, and this is the point of it takes a while. The student, I'm pretty sure, I didn't check my records, but I'm pretty sure she took Start Your Service Pattern Business in fall of 2020. So now it's, spring of 2022. So like a year and a half, but she got a little bit of work when she was in the class and everything. And then I didn't really keep up with her so much, but she DM'd me and she just was like in there to say thank you again, because she had just secured like a $5,000 deal, and it was going to be multiple like collections in the future.
Awesome.
And it was something that I think she originally reached out to them during the class or because of the class, whatever, it had something to do with some small bit to do with me, and that's why she was reaching out. But like,
doesn't that make you feel great?
$5,000? That's someone, where am I going to get that deal? I hope I get that deal next, but I'm not like, oh man, I wish she didn't get it. I'm like, sweet, that means they're out there, so I love that.
And one point I wanted to make, Pippa, when you were talking about rejection, is that a lot of times rejection comes in the form of silence. It's not like people are going to say, we hate your design. It's just you'll hear nothing back. And actually, that's not necessarily rejection, because they could reach out to you much later. There's a lot of stories of that. Yes. And if you continue to promote yourself, continue to send newsletters, then
be consistent,
more likely. Yeah.
Well, obviously there's, like if I'm really, really busy, my newsletter, it gets put on hold, because I'm not producing work that I can share with my, newsletter list, because, I'm doing client work that's going to be kept private for however long. Right. And, you fit it in around, but it always comes up as a reminder on my computer, and I might snooze it for a week, but I never dismiss it, because it's there. And then the more I'm reminded of it, and then you can, like one evening you're like, okay, I'll just do 10 minutes and I'll just do a bit of it, and I'll upload some images, and then like a week later, you find time to kind of, it doesn't even have to be much. And it's funny, because you can I've been sending my newsletter for years now, years and years, just to art directors. It's not, I'm not selling products or anything to the public. And sometimes you just think, am I just sending, is this just like this big waste of time and it's going out into nowhere? And then, all of a sudden someone that's never ever replied before, they're like, oh yeah, I always enjoy getting your newsletter, and and like, it's like, the stars have aligned that I've got a product and you sent this bit of work and it's finally working out, and so it is worth it. It doesn't always feel like it's worth it, but it is worth it. And you're not going to get, you're not going to get it from everyone on your list. Like, it's a percentages game, like anything. So and another thing,
go ahead.
No, one thing I thought as well, it's like, I remember I read the book by Lisa Condon called Art Inc. And she talks a lot about diversifying income, and I found that really helpful for me, from at the beginning, knowing that was an important thing, because I was like, yeah, I'll just do, licensing, everyone says blah, blah, blah. And then reading it, sort of set out by someone, in a way that was a business kind of talk way, it really changed my perspective on how to approach it is a business, and things change, and you could lose your biggest client and overnight go from great to nothing. And so, and it's it takes a while to build up these income streams, so don't feel like that's just what I wanted to add.
I love that. Well, I think that we gave a good look of the sort of zoomed out part of it, and we have to think about, obviously our focus in these talks is pricing, but today I think we really covered a lot of different topics, because, it is hard it's hard. This business is not easy. And that's why, we're trying to create some support and create some community in the Facebook groups, and just by talking about this more openly. But even though it can be difficult, even though especially thinking long-term can really be difficult, because we can't predict the future, and because we can't expect ourselves to be responsible for like raising the industry, based on our one project that we're doing, because all that is very difficult. I think it's good to have some of those some of this external information about diversifying, and about, really considering what the value of certain courses are, and all those type of things. But a win for one person is a win for everyone, even if it feels hard to believe sometimes. So this is sort of the end of this like set of like, tenets that we kind of came up with. But I think that there are more pricing talks in the future to be had for sure. And definitely join the Facebook group, which again is going to be linked below. But thank you guys so much for all of this contribution, because I think these are great discussions for everyone to understand.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for hosting, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
In the description of all my YouTube videos, I have a link to elizabethsilver.com/fresh, which will take you to sign up for my Surface Pattern Boss Toolkit. Once you sign up, you'll get an email to confirm, and then you'll get the password to get into this toolkit, where you can find all kinds of resources, surface pattern job guide, business advice, all kinds of trend reports, plus bonus videos, and access to the archives from my newsletters, where I have all kinds of cool links and useful creative business advice that you can check out. So I hope you go down to the link and join me. I'd love to have you. And while you're at it, hit subscribe and check out more videos on my channel.